I never believed in hell until I took a job at its embassy. The ad was vague, posted on a deep web forum I stumbled upon during a particularly desperate job search. Security position available, discretion required, excellent pay, night shifts only. The salary they offered was triple what I'd made at my last 3 jobs combined. I should have known something was wrong when they hired me over the phone without asking for references or even my full work history. All they wanted to know was whether I could follow instructions precisely and if I was comfortable with silence. The building sits in downtown, wedged between a closed pawn shop and an abandoned theater. You've probably walked past it 100 times without noticing. It's designed that way. The architecture is deliberately forgettable, the kind of gray brutalist structure your eyes slide right off. There's no sign, no indication of what happens inside. Just a heavy steel door with a small bronze placard that reads Diplomatic Services in letters so small you'd have to press your face against it to read them. My first night, I arrived at 11:45 p.m. as instructed. The door opened before I could knock. A woman in an immaculate black suit stood in the threshold. Her eyes were wrong somehow, too dark, like staring into wells that went down forever. She handed me a laminated card without introduction. "These are the rules," she said. Her voice had a strange quality, like multiple people speaking in perfect unison. "Read them now. Memorize them. Your life depends on following them exactly." She left before I could respond, her footsteps making no sound on the marble floor. I stood in the entrance hall, and that's when I felt it for the first time. The temperature. It wasn't just cold. The air had a quality I'd never experienced before, a sort of inverted warmth, like the building was actively draining heat from my body. My breath came out in thick clouds. I looked down at the card, 6 rules, printed in red ink that seemed to shimmer under the fluorescent lights. Rule 1. Never look directly at the portraits on the 3rd floor. If you must walk past them, keep your eyes on the floor. If you hear your name spoken from within a frame, run immediately to the ground floor and do not stop for any reason. Rule 2. The elevator only goes to floors 1 through 5. If the panel shows a button for floor 6, do not press it. If the elevator begins descending to floor 6 on its own, press every other button simultaneously and do not exit when the doors open. Rule 3. Between 2 and 3 a.m., something will knock on the front door exactly 7 times. Do not answer it. Do not look through the peephole. Do not acknowledge the knocking in any way. Stand at least 15 feet from the door during this hour. Rule 4. If you encounter anyone in the building after midnight, verify their shadow. If their shadow moves independently or does not match their body, do not speak to them. Do not let them touch you. Walk away calmly and lock yourself in the security office until dawn. Rule 5. The security office has 2 doors, one red and one white. Only use the white door. The red door is not an exit. If you hear scratching from behind the red door, play the recording labeled Psalms at maximum volume until the scratching stops. Rule 6. If you see a child in a white gown anywhere in the building, your shift is over. Leave immediately through the front entrance. Do not run. Do not look back. Submit your resignation the following day. You cannot work here anymore. I read the rules 3 times, my hands shaking so badly the card rattled. This had to be some kind of elaborate prank, a test to see if I'd actually show up and take it seriously, but the cold was real. The building's oppressive atmosphere was real, and the money was definitely real. They'd already deposited the first week's pay into my account. The security office was on the 1st floor, a small room with monitors showing various parts of the building. I settled into the chair, trying to ignore the way the screens seemed to flicker with shadows that didn't correspond to anything in the rooms. The clock on the wall ticked loudly, each second feeling like a countdown. Nothing happened for the first hour. I watched the monitors, walked the perimeter of the 1st floor, checked the doors. Normal security work. I almost relaxed. Then, at exactly 1:15 a.m., I decided to check the third floor. I needed to see those portraits for myself. The elevator hummed as it rose. The sound was wrong, like a deep groan coming from somewhere far below. When the doors opened on the third floor, the temperature dropped at least 20 degrees. My breath turned to ice crystals in the air. The hallway stretched impossibly long, lined with ornate frames containing paintings of figures in elaborate robes. Diplomats, I assumed, or whatever served that function here. I kept my eyes down as instructed, watching only the floor as I walked. But peripheral vision is a traitor. I caught glimpses. A hand with too many fingers. A face with features that shifted and rearranged. Robes that seemed to be made of shadow and flame. And then I heard it. Marcus. My name, spoken in a voice that sounded like my mother's, but deeper, distorted, wrong. It came from one of the portraits to my left. Every instinct screamed at me to look, to see which painting had spoken. I ran. I didn't think, didn't hesitate. I sprinted for the stairwell and took the stairs 3 at a time, not stopping until I burst into the security office and slammed the white door behind me. I sat there for 20 minutes trying to control my breathing, telling myself I'd imagined it. Stress, exhaustion, the weird atmosphere of the building playing tricks on my mind. But I knew better. Something in those portraits was aware of me. Something knew my name. At 1:55 a.m., I remembered Rule 3. The knocking would start in 5 minutes. I pulled my chair to the far corner of the security office, as far from the front door as possible. I watched the clock. 2 a.m. arrived with a silence so profound it hurt my ears. Then the knocking began. 7 precise, measured knocks. Each one resonated through the building like a drumbeat, making the walls vibrate. I gripped the arms of my chair, forcing myself to stay seated, to not respond. The sound was designed to provoke a reaction, to make you want to see what was causing it. Between each knock, I heard something else. Breathing. Wet, labored breathing, like something with damaged lungs struggling for air. The 7th knock came, and silence returned. I thought it was over. Then a voice spoke through the door. "I know you're in there. I've been waiting so long. Won't you let me in? I'm so cold out here." It was a child's voice, small and pitiful. Every human instinct urged me to help, but I remembered the rules. Rule 6 specifically mentioned a child. This was a test. It had to be. I stayed silent, pressed against the back wall, watching the clock. The minutes crawled past. The voice continued pleading, sometimes crying, sometimes screaming in rage, sometimes whispering promises of what it would do if I just opened the door. At 3:01 a.m., it stopped. The silence that followed felt like a weight being lifted. I exhaled, not realizing I'd been holding my breath. I'd survived the first major test. The rest of that night passed without incident, though I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched through the monitors. When 6 a.m. arrived and daylight began filtering through the windows, the building's atmosphere changed. The oppressive cold lifted slightly. The shadows retreated. I completed my shift report, noting nothing unusual, as instructed during my brief training. I came back the next night, and the night after that. The money was too good, and part of me needed to understand what this place really was. The woman in the black suit appeared occasionally, always silent, always watching me with those bottomless eyes. I never saw anyone else during the day shift changes. The building seemed to empty completely during daylight hours. On my 6th night, I broke Rule 4. Not intentionally. I was checking the 2nd floor, walking past what appeared to be offices with frosted glass doors. A man in a gray suit stood at the end of the hallway, his back to me. He looked normal, professional, like he belonged there. I was about to speak to ask if he needed assistance when I noticed his shadow on the wall. It wasn't mimicking his posture. While he stood still, his shadow was moving, arms reaching out, head tilting at impossible angles. I backed away slowly, not taking my eyes off him. His head began to turn, rotating far beyond what any human neck could manage. I saw his face, or what was wearing his face, like a mask. The features were slightly wrong, the proportions off just enough to trigger every primal warning system in my brain. I walked backward to the stairwell, maintaining eye contact with the thing until I could slip through the door. I heard it laugh as I descended, a sound like glass breaking in slow motion. I locked myself in the security office for the rest of the night, watching the monitors obsessively. The thing in the gray suit appeared on different cameras, always just standing there, always watching the lens. At 4 a.m., it vanished between camera angles, there 1 second and gone the next. The woman in black arrived at dawn. She stood in the doorway of the security office, studying me with those terrible eyes. "You encountered one of them," she said. It wasn't a question. "What is this place?" I asked, my voice hoarse from out of silence. "What is on worry for your scares? This thou as worries see trains, suarti. What? This is Tony Simbora, which is embassy, a point of contact between worlds. The things you've seen are diplomats of a sort, envoys from a place that exists in the spaces between spaces. We maintain this building to keep them contained, to prevent them from spreading into the city. Your job is to ensure the rules are followed because the rules keep this place stable. They keep reality intact within these walls." "Why the rules? What happens if they're broken?" She smiled, and for a moment, something moved beneath her skin, like there was someone else looking out through her face. "The rules are a compromise. They give the envoys limited freedom while maintaining boundaries. Break too many rules, and those boundaries dissolve. The elevator to floor 6? That doesn't go down. It goes sideways into their realm. The portraits on the 3rd floor contain their true forms, trapped in 2 dimensions where they can't fully manifest. The knocking at 2 a.m. is them testing the threshold, seeing if anyone will grant them invitation. And the child in white," she paused, her expression darkening, "that one is special. That one is the ambassador. If you see it, the building has decided you've served your purpose. It means you've been marked. Marked people don't last long." She left me with those words, and I spent the entire day trying to decide whether to quit. But that night, I returned. Something about the place had gotten into my head. I needed to understand more. I needed to see how deep this went. Weeks passed. I learned the patterns, the safe times and places. I learned that the scratching behind the red door came every 3rd night, always starting at 4:30 a.m. The first time I heard it, I made the mistake of getting close, trying to identify what was making the sound. The door bulged outward, wood splintering, something pressing against it with immense force. I grabbed the recording labeled Psalms and played it, the ancient words filling the security office. The scratching stopped immediately, and the door returned to its normal shape, though deep gouge marks remained on its surface. I learned that the elevator could be trusted most nights, but on Tuesdays, a 6th floor button would appear, glowing with a sickly yellow light. Once, I watched on the monitors as it appeared, and I saw something step out of the elevator when it returned to the 1st floor. Something tall and thin that moved like a puppet with half its strings cut. It wandered the 1st floor hallway for an hour before dissolving into smoke. I learned that the portraits on the 3rd floor changed. Not obviously, but if you compared them week to week, the figures inside were in different positions, moving slowly, incrementally, like they were trying to reach the edge of their frames. I documented this in my personal notes, never in the official reports. Something told me that noticing such things was dangerous. The worst night came during my 3rd month. I was checking the 4th floor, which I'd been avoiding because the rules didn't mention it. No rule meant no protection, but also no explicit warning. The 4th floor housed what looked like meeting rooms. Long tables surrounded by chairs, walls covered in symbols I didn't recognize. In the largest room, I found a book on the table, bound in something that looked disturbingly like human skin. It was open to a page showing a map of the city, but the streets were all wrong, twisted into patterns that hurt to look at. Red dots marked locations throughout the downtown area. I counted 13 of them. As I watched, a 14th dot appeared, pulsing slowly. I checked the legend at the bottom of the map. Active thresholds, it read. I heard footsteps behind me, multiple sets, moving in perfect synchronization. I turned to see 3 figures in the doorway, all wearing the same gray suit as the thing I'd encountered weeks before. But these were different. Their faces were blank, smooth skin where features should have been. They stood perfectly still, heads tilted toward me in unison. I felt their attention like a physical weight, pressing down on my shoulders. They took a step forward together. I remembered the rules. No rule specifically covered this situation, which meant I had to improvise based on what I knew. Don't engage. Don't let them touch you. Get to a safe location. I walked toward them, gambling that they'd move aside. They didn't. I stopped 3 feet away, close enough to see that their suits were made of something that looked like fabric, but moved wrong, rippling like water, close enough to smell them, a scent like ozone and copper. "I'm just doing my rounds," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I'll be out of your way." One of them reached out, its arm extending far beyond natural length, fingers elongating into points. I ducked and ran, feeling those fingers brush the back of my neck, leaving a trail of ice-cold numbness. I made it to the stairwell and descended, taking 4 floors at a breakneck pace. Behind me, I heard them following, their footsteps still in perfect sync, a rhythmic thunder on the metal stairs. I burst into the security office and slammed the white door, engaging every lock. The footsteps stopped outside. For 10 minutes, nothing happened. Then scratching began. Not on the red door this time, but on the white one. Long, slow scratches, like something was testing the wood's strength. I played the Psalms recording, but it had no effect. These things weren't affected by the same protections. The scratching continued until dawn, methodical and patient. When sunlight finally broke through the windows, it stopped instantly. I opened the door to find deep gouges in the wood, arranged in a pattern. A message, a warning. I photographed it before maintenance arrived to replace the door, and later I found a translation in an old book about occult symbols. It read, "We know you now." I should have quit then. The woman in black told me as much when she saw the photo. "They've marked you," she said. "Not the same as seeing the child, but close. They're aware of you as an individual now, not just as the security guard. That changes things. They'll test you more frequently, push boundaries. You should consider ending your employment." But I stayed. Something in me had changed during those months. The normal world felt flat now, colorless. I'd seen behind the curtain, glimpsed the machinery underneath reality. How could I go back to a regular life, knowing what existed in the spaces between? The money was still excellent, but that wasn't why I stayed anymore. The tests increased in frequency and intensity. Objects would be moved in the security office while I made my rounds. My chair turned to face the red door, my coffee cup refilled with a black liquid that smelled like sulfur. Once, I returned to find every monitor showing the same image. Myself, sleeping in my apartment, filmed from an impossible angle directly above my bed. I got rid of that footage and never mentioned it in my reports. The portraits on the 3rd floor became more aggressive. I could hear multiple voices now calling my name, not just one. They knew things about me, whispered secrets I'd never told anyone, childhood memories, private shames. They offered bargains in voices that mimicked dead relatives, promised knowledge and power if I would just look, just make eye contact with the figures in the frames. I learned to recite multiplication tables in my head while passing through that hallway, filling my mind with numbers to block out the voices. It helped, but not completely. Some of their words still got through, planting seeds of doubt and paranoia. The knocking at 2 a.m. evolved. It was no longer just 7 knocks. Sometimes it would go on for the full hour, hundreds of impacts that shook the building's foundation. Sometimes it would spell out messages in Morse code, though I didn't know Morse code and had to look it up later. The messages were always the same. Let us in, let us through, let us spread. I strengthened my resolve. This was the job. This was the purpose. Keep them contained, follow the rules, maintain the boundary. I was the thin line between the city and whatever wanted to pour through from the other side. Then came the night I saw the child. I'd just finished checking the second floor, feeling confident, almost comfortable in my routine. I rounded a corner, and there it was, standing at the end of the hallway. A small figure in a white gown that glowed with its own luminescence. Its face was turned away from me, long dark hair obscuring its features. It was humming something, a lullaby that tugged at memories I didn't have. Rule 6 was clear. Leave immediately. Don't run. Don't look back. But I was frozen, unable to move, trapped by the wrongness of the scene. The child began to turn, slowly, its head rotating first, then its body following in increments. I caught a glimpse of its face and immediately understood why seeing it meant your time was over. Its features were a collage, pieces from different people stitched together into a mockery of a human child. Its eyes were the worst. Pupils that expanded and contracted independently, looking in different directions simultaneously. I forced my legs to move. I turned and walked, not running despite every instinct screaming at me to sprint. Behind me, the humming continued, growing louder, following me as I made my way to the stairs. I descended one flight, then another, maintaining a steady pace even as I heard small footsteps echoing above me. The child was following, staying just out of sight. I reached the first floor and walked to the front entrance with measured steps. My hand touched the door handle and the humming stopped. In the sudden silence, a voice spoke, high and sweet and utterly wrong. You've been such a good guard, Marcus. We've enjoyed watching you learn, watching you change. You're almost ready now. Almost one of us. Don't you want to stay? Don't you want to understand everything? We could show you such wonders. I opened the door and stepped out into the pre-dawn darkness. The cold morning air hit my face like a slap, shocking me back to full awareness. I wanted to look back, wanted to see if the child was still there, but I kept my eyes forward and walked away. I didn't stop walking until I reached the subway station 6 blocks away. I submitted my resignation via email that afternoon. The woman in black responded within minutes. Understood. Your final payment has been processed. You are released from service. Do not return to the building. Do not speak of what you've seen. Forget if you can. But forgetting isn't possible. I dream about that building every night. I see the portraits, hear the knocking, feel the presence of those gray-suited things following me through twisted hallways. Sometimes I wake up with scratches on my arms, arranged in patterns I recognize from the occult symbols. My apartment feels wrong now, like the walls are slightly too close together, like the angles don't quite add up. Last week I found a 14th red dot on a map of my own neighborhood. It's pulsing, growing, brighter each time I check. I think I know what it means. The boundary isn't holding as well as they thought. The embassy isn't containing them anymore. They're spreading, establishing new thresholds, new points of contact, and they remember me. They marked me. They called me almost one of them. I'm writing this as a warning. If you ever see a job posting for security work at a diplomatic building downtown, offering excellent pay for night shifts, don't take it. If you walk past a gray, brutalist building with no sign and feel a sudden cold that makes no sense, keep walking. And if you ever find yourself in a building where the rules don't quite make sense, where the geometry feels wrong, where things move in the shadows that shouldn't exist, follow every instruction exactly. Don't question. Don't investigate. Don't try to understand. Because understanding is how they get in. Understanding is how they spread. And once you understand, once you've really seen them, they never let you go. I'm proof of that. I followed the rules. I survived my shifts. I left when instructed. But I'm still marked, still connected, still feeling them at the edges of my perception, waiting for the moment when the boundary's thin enough for them to reach through. The woman in black was wrong about one thing. She said the embassy keeps them contained, keeps reality intact within those walls. But I think it's the opposite. I think that building is a beachhead, a foothold in our world, and every person who works there, every guard who follows those rules and maintains that threshold, is helping them establish a stronger presence. We think we're keeping them in, but really, we're helping them anchor themselves to our reality. I see their signs everywhere now. Buildings that shouldn't exist, appearing overnight and disappearing by morning. People whose shadows move wrong. Graffiti in languages that hurt to read. The city is changing, slowly, incrementally, becoming more like that place between places. And I can't help but wonder if I accelerated the process by working there, by following their rules, by becoming part of their system. Sometimes I think about going back. They said I can't, but I know where the building is. I could walk in right now if I wanted. Part of me wants to. The part they changed during those months of exposure. The part that now understands, at least partially, what exists beyond the veil of normal reality. That part whispers that I could learn more, see more, become more, if I just returned. If I just opened one of those forbidden doors, if I just looked directly at those portraits and accepted what they're offering. But I resist. I fight that whisper every day. Because I remember Rule 6. I saw the child. My time is over. And if I go back, if I return to that embassy, I won't be going as a guard anymore. I'll be going as something else, something that belongs to them, something that exists in service to whatever lurks behind those rules and lives in the spaces between spaces. I'll become what those gray-suited things are, a diplomat of hell, an envoy from the other side, and I'll spend eternity trying to convince others to open doors that should stay closed forever.